Today, we are talking about Christopher Gadsden. Now, that might not be a name you hear every day, but I guarantee you know his work. He was one of the American Revolution's most fiery, most complex, and honestly, most contradictory figures.
Okay, let's just jump right in. You've seen this flag everywhere, right? On flagpoles, bumper stickers, t-shirts, you name it. It's this powerful symbol of defiance, a clear warning to anyone who might try to step on your rights. A coiled snake ready to go. You can't mistake that message.
But here's the thing. While the flag itself seems so straightforward, the man who designed it was anything but. His story is just full of these twists and turns that I think are going to surprise you. So, let's get into it. Who was Christopher Gadsden?
To really get the revolutionary, you first have to understand who he was before the revolution. And what he was a proud, successful member of the British Empire. This wasn't a guy who was born to be a rebel. He was born into the system.
Gadsden's early life is pretty much a textbook story of success for the colonial elite. He was born into a wealthy family in South Carolina, then gets shipped off to London for a top-notch education. When he comes back to Charleston, he hits the ground running, becomes a successful merchant, a land speculator, and a planter. And let's be clear, being a planter in 18th century South Carolina meant he was also a major slave owner. By 1757, he's in the colony's assembly. I mean, he was a true pillar of the British establishment.
And his time in London didn't make him feel like an outsider. It actually made him feel more British. He deeply believed in his rights, but he saw them as the rights of an Englishman. So, you have to ask, what could possibly happen to turn this loyal subject into one of America's most vocal radicals?
Well, the change didn't happen overnight. It was more of a slow burn, sparked by a series of conflicts where Gadsden started to feel like the British Crown wasn't treating the colonists as equals, but as second-class subjects.
A huge turning point was the Cherokee War. When the British military sent its own officers to run the show, Gadsden was absolutely furious. He started writing under a pseudonym, accusing them of just being glory huns who didn't get the local situation at all. For him, defending the colonies was a job for the colonists. His own friend, Henry Lawrence, completely disagreed and defended the British command. And right there, you see this split in identity. Gadsden was starting to think of himself as a South Carolinian first, while Lawrence still saw himself as a Briton, same as the officers from London.
Now, this growing feeling of a separate identity needed a philosophical backbone, and Gadsden found it in the idea of natural rights. This concept, made famous by thinkers like John Locke, basically argues that your rights don't come from a king or a government. You are simply born with them. And bringing that idea into mainstream politics back then, that was pretty radical stuff.
And Gadsden started using it directly. During a local election dispute, he argued that because colonists couldn't vote for members of parliament, their fundamental natural rights as British subjects were being stomped on. He wasn't just arguing about some local rule, he was saying the whole imperial system was denying them a basic human right.
As this conflict got more and more heated, Gadsden's tactics got more and more radical. He started with the proper legal channels, going to the Stamp Act Congress to formally petition the king. When that didn't get him anywhere, he shifted to economic warfare, organizing big boycotts of British goods. And when that still wasn't enough, he helped lead the Sons of Liberty, taking the fight right to the streets with protests and intimidation. Gadsden was willing to push the envelope every single time.
So he helps win a revolution fought against a strong, distant government, and he's cheering on popular protests the whole way. You'd expect him to be a lifelong defender of limited government and the people's right to dissent, right? Well, this is where the story takes a huge turn, and we see the central paradox of Christopher Gadsden.
I mean, his transformation after independence is just stunning. Before the war, he saw mob protests as a vital weapon against tyranny. Afterwards, he condemned them as a threat to the brand new republic. The guy who fought so hard against a powerful centralized government became a diehard Federalist, arguing for a strong national government under the Constitution. And the former champion of radical dissent, he started calling for national unity and even forgiveness for his old enemies, the Loyalists. It's a total reversal.
Gadsden himself had a reason for this complete 180. In his mind, the rules of the game had completely changed. Protest and radical action were necessary when you were up against a distant, unaccountable king. But once Americans had their own representative government, a government by the people, those same tactics weren't protest anymore. They were an attack on the republic itself. The revolution was won. It was time to build a stable country and follow the law. So when you put all of this together, you end up with a legacy that's just impossible to squeeze into a simple box. Gadsden was a man of profound
and yeah, often glaring contradictions.
Okay, let's talk about them. The most jarring one, of course, is his view on liberty. Here's a man who was a passionate voice against political slavery under the British, yet he was an unrepentant slave owner his entire life, holding hundreds of people in bondage. It's just a stark reminder of how these historical figures could champion political freedom for themselves while denying personal freedom to others. Then you have the radical, who becomes a conservative, defending the very kind of establishment he once fought to tear down. And finally, he hated the idea of political parties, thought they'd tear the new nation apart, all while being a hardcore Federalist himself.
Which brings us right back to where we started. In 1776, when Gadsden presented this flag, it was a very specific message from the colonies to the British Crown. It was a symbol of a united people, warning a powerful, distant government not to trample on their rights, or else.
That flag has lived a life of its own, way beyond its creator. Gadsden's warning was aimed at a very specific type of power, an unaccountable royal one. After the Revolution, he turned around and championed a strong new central government of his own. It really leaves us with a fascinating question. What would this complex, contradictory, radical-turned Federalist think about all the different ways his symbol of defiance is used today?